Welcome, fellow explorers. My name is Christian Alexanderson, and this is Hemlocks to Hellbenders, a podcast highlighting Pennsylvania's parks, forests, and great outdoors. What does it mean to have a diverse outdoors community? It's a question outdoor companies, organizations, and groups are asking themselves in an effort to make nature more inclusive for people from all backgrounds, genders, abilities, and ethnicities. But while they're trying to find the answer, America's black and brown communities are exploring the outdoors. On hiking trails, rock walls, waterways, and bike paths, they are discovering and, oftentimes, rediscovering their love for the natural world. Groups are forming that seek to inspire, connect, and engage their communities in the outdoors. They are having their voices heard and their stories told. Through their collective efforts of enjoying the outdoors, they are ensuring that their history and heritage are valued and represented outside. One such group is Latino Outdoors Philadelphia. Part of a larger national organization, Latino Outdoors Philly brings together people to help create a world where all Latino communities enjoy nature as a safe, inclusive, and welcoming place. They celebrate their shared culture and experiences as they make their way through a sometimes unwelcoming outdoor community in Pennsylvania. It's a welcome change that the outdoor world should embrace and support. I surely do. I'm excited to welcome Julie Passione to the podcast. Julie is the program coordinator for Latino Outdoors Philadelphia. Julie, thanks for joining the program.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about Latino Outdoors?
Latino Outdoors was started actually 10 years ago. This year is our 10th anniversary. And it was founded by Jose Gonzalez, in California, who became really, really aware of the lack of Latinx and Latin representation in the world of outdoor rec, conservation, and environmental education. And so he started more of like an online blog or a forum for people, like a social sort of network for people to connect. And then from there, there was really the drive to do more than communicate online and to have shared experiences and to meet up. And so from there, it's really evolved to what it is today, which is like a national organization of Latinx leaders that are leading outings for their communities, trying to remove any barriers of access. Everything is always free to participants, trying to really engage people outdoors. And then at its root, and really what founded it, was creating a sense of community in the outdoor rec space, in the outdoor rec sphere.
What does Latino Outdoors do to inspire, connect, and engage Latino communities in the outdoors?
As a whole, I think it's trying to reach out and really listen and hear from what Latino communities in the areas in which the volunteers live, where their interest lies, and really creating opportunity that may not have been present or amplifying things that exist, and really bringing people together and sharing a connection to the outdoors. So introducing new experiences, amplifying existing ones, and again, I'd say try to remove as many possible barriers to access for outdoor recreation.
I know a crucial aspect of Latino Outdoors is embracing culture and family as part of the outdoor narrative. Why is that important to you and the organization?
So to me, connecting to the outdoors is really, or even being in the outdoors is a touch point and a moment for me to reflect and connect with myself. Even on my desk here to the side, I have a framed photo of my sister and I as children, sitting together, legs interlocked, playing with bugs in the dirt. So for me, being outdoors is a very grounding, quite literally grounding experience. And it connects me to those really beautiful moments of childhood wonder, and at some point feeling like I got disconnected from that consciously or unconsciously, And so to be involved in this organization and to create or try to grow and have greater visibility of community outside um, feels like a homecoming for me specifically. And then I'd say, as a whole, the organization is really trying to be true to the cultural and historical roots in which Hispanic and Latino cultural identity has had a really profound respect for nature and connection to nature, and even in religious beliefs, revering nature and really being a steward of the land. And so there's this really long legacy of being connected to the earth, respecting the earth, caring for the earth, that in the way that I see more modern, more Western representation of outdoor engagement, uh, is a bit disconnected. And so there is that cultural and identity legacy there that is a bit disjointed from the way we see outdoor recreation being represented. And so some people may believe that Latinos aren't really outdoors, or that they're, they're kayaking isn't for them, or hiking is something more foreign because it's just reserved for certain people who present themselves a certain way. And so community and family to Latino Outdoors is getting back in touch with that cultural truth of there really being a long-standing history of connection to the earth and community around it. And I think even just I think it would go back to similar to what I said about my personal experience, like it feeling more home, it feeling more comfortable. And so it's trying to instill enough confidence in people. And there's also, leadership opportunities and leadership development and learning. So trying to empower people so that they're confident in doing things on their own, but also being very grounded in community and shared experience.
Well, you spoke about your connection in the outdoors. Let's delve a little bit deeper into that. How did you first get involved in the outdoors? And what are some of your favorite outdoor activities now?
My earliest and most vivid memory of being outdoors may maybe between two different things. And one of them, they're both around kindergarten age. One of them would be um, it was a year in which the cicadas came back out and just going crazy, like trying to pick off their, I'm not sure if it's not a carcass, but their shedded skin, like picking them off of trees, trying to collect them, watching them transform and morph, and trying to bring some home, and not being allowed to bring them inside, and just like the difference, witnessing the different the changes they went through as they grew from their, I don't know if they're called nymphs, but of their different insect stages, and just being such in awe of that. And then I'd say my other memory would probably also be in kindergarten, gardening. I was fortunate to have a school garden. Was part of our day was to go out and tend things, and eating from just ripping it right off the plant, eating fennel leaf. And that was like my favorite thing to do. And then at some point noticing like a difference in texture, a difference in flavor, um, and realizing that there was aphids all over it. So I think those are my two earliest outdoor memories, observing and trying to collect insects, and then being more of like a gardener tender.
How did your connection change from when you were a kid and you remember these great memories to as you got older?
I think I did lose that really strong connection. And I would say probably as I got, like, I went through schooling, so maybe more like middle school, high school, early college years, where I became very inward focused and very focused on like the craft I was pursuing, which was art. And yeah, and I think I lost that curiosity or that appreciation for being outside. And then in college, there I went to Philadelphia University, which is pretty close, if not immediately adjacent to the Wissahickon Valley Park. And so I'd say that was a bit of like baby steps getting back into it, and going on hikes and just remembering how just the feeling of being surrounded and encompassed by things that are not human based or not human centered. Yeah, and then from there I think I've just tried to get more and more into it. I've definitely tried to get more into planting, and even now I will find an excuse to put to switch plants between pots, or to just bust out the dirt. Like, I'll text my sister and I'll be like, there is something, and I'm not sure what it is, but there is just something for me that is so immediately gratifying to physically touch the earth or a part of the earth. So like even dirt.
Tell us a little bit about Latino Outdoors Philly. When was it created? How many members do you have?
Yeah, so Latino Outdoors Philly kicked off, I want to say towards the end of April of 2022. So we've been around for just a little over a year. I actually had attended an event that was hosted in Maryland. That was the Latino DMV chapter had put together. And I just had such a great time that I went up to some of the leaders. It's like, this is fantastic. I live in Philadelphia. Do you have anything? It's like, is there a chapter? Is there something near there? And they told me that they would get back to me, that they weren't sure, maybe New York, but they would follow up. And so they did follow up, and they let me know that there wasn't one currently, but that there was opportunity there potentially, that they had been thinking about that national, because there is a national team that works, that they had been considering Philadelphia as a region. And so my sister, who was and is a volunteer for Latino Outdoors in DMV and now in Baltimore, put me in touch with the programs managers. And yeah, and it really started from there. They were asking me if I could find at least two other people that were interested to help support. So I roped in my good friend from college, Charlene, and she roped in her other good friend, Ronaldo, and we had the bare minimum to start. And from there, I think it's really, we have another member now, Chris, and I think it's really picked up, and we don't really have a membership per se. There isn't really something you have to do to become a part of it. And I think that's really part of kind of baked into the philosophy of LO, as being more of like an open community and less of a exclusivity or strong like titles or lines. But I will say that our Instagram following has gone up quite a bit. We inherited accounts from a previous chapter that was based in State College, and I'd say our following has gone up about like quadrupled
Oh, wow.
for Instagram, for Facebook. And I'm always curious to know how people have heard about us when they come out to events. We've definitely, I think, being a year so in, started to see more recurring faces, which is great. That's one of my favorite things, is seeing people come back, seeing people bring their friends and their family, and also seeing people meet each other. And that's what makes me feel like I am being successful, somewhat successful, in trying to shape what the LO Philly community, to try to build it, looks like.
What kind of programs or events do you host to bring the Latino community outdoors?
So we've done a range of things. I think hiking is really the most accessible for different age groups and different physical abilities. And then we've also done a stargazing night. We've done rock climbing. We're trying to establish a reoccurring camping trip every year at the end of the summer. And that's something that we do with the organization Sierra Club. In addition to having, kind of general or typical outdoor events, we also try make it a point to connect back to identity and culture. And I'll say a really gratifying thing is, well, earlier I mentioned it's really gratifying to see people making new connections, but it's additionally gratifying to see it happen in Spanish or in Spanglish, because that, I think, again, going back to family, that's something that feels so much like home to me, that it's almost strange, but in a good way, to see it happen, to witness it happen and be a part of it in these spaces that I so typically or was used to occupying either alone or only in English with people who I felt dissimilar from. I think language is one of those things that draws people out, and feeling comfortable knowing that this is a space dedicated for them and that they're welcome to be in. And if they can't speak English, that's not going to be a barrier. And then there's also cultural aspects. Like we had an event recently, like a 10-year anniversary celebration with Hispanic Access Foundation. And that was at John Hines National Wildlife Refuge. And we had a Puerto Rican band come out, and they were great. They were giving like educational information about the different types of styles of music. They had dancers, like a dance lesson portion. And then we also had some typical cultural Puerto Rican dishes. So I think it also gives people the opportunity to both share their cultural identity in a space where maybe they haven't had the opportunity to or didn't feel comfortable doing it, and then to also for others to expand their knowledge of the Latina diaspora.
Would you say the people that attend your events, are they just discovering the outdoors, or do you think they're reestablishing a connection they may have had earlier in their life?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think we have a mix. We've got really quite an age range, although I would say primarily young adults and then older adults. And more recently, we've had more engagement with people bringing their children. Generally, from what I hear, I've heard somewhat similar to my experience where people had done activities before, but either by themselves or with a friend. I vividly recall a somewhat recent hike was this year that we had in the Wissahickon, just overhearing somebody being shocked and having the realization that they had never gone hiking with a group of Latinos, and just having that like revelation that this was the first ever experience for them, even though they had been living in Philly for quite some time. So we'll have people like that. And then we have definitely have some older adults as well who I have like someone on top of mind who's a really avid climber. And so they came out to our events and definitely just seemed really really excited, for lack of a better word, to be able to fully speak in Spanish.
Do you think it's important that members try different outdoor activities, maybe things that are a little out of their comfort range or things they haven't tried before?
Yeah, I think so. With the exception of having like a deadly fear of water or heights, I think it's healthy to try new experiences. And I've also I heard or learned, I just recall in like a college course I had about, charting your own path, or just, oh, you know what? It was a philosophy class and it was titled like Philosophy of the Good Life. And a really major undercurrent was this idea that people had to fulfill their passion or in order to be satisfied in life. And then I don't know if it's a paradox or oxymoron of not knowing what your passion is, or not being able to define your passion. If it's not something that you've done and felt that ignited connection with, right? I don't expect people to, without without having ever done it, know that they just absolutely love backpacking. Like that's an experience that takes some learned knowledge, that takes some know-how. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to try something new, and if if they're not feeling super passionate about it, they don't have to try it again. But that's definitely how I've been introduced to some of my current favorite pastimes.
What kind of struggles would you say the Latino community faces in outdoor spaces?
I think a really big one is language and being able to digest information. There's been quite a few trails or parks that I've been to where even in English it's a little unclear where I'm supposed to go, where I'm allowed to go, what can be done there. So I think even in terms of easily conveying information, analog information too, right? Because some people don't have the ability to look stuff up on their phone, or, look up on the computer beforehand. I think even just more visual communication information would be super helpful, because then it doesn't have to be so text driven. I feel like text is kind of the default, so like wayfinding and signage, and trying to have information about like facilities and what can be done there and how to get there just right off the bat would be one. And then being in Philadelphia and being in a city center, I think the other thing would probably be transportation and trying to get out to state parks that are further away. And I think state parks in general can be a bit less accessible if you don't have a car or something to get to.
Over the years, the gendered characteristics of the Spanish language has evolved. Words like Latino, Latina, and Hispanic have given way to more gender neutral words like Latin and Latinx. Do you have any suggestions for how people can interact with the Latino community respectfully?
That's a good one. Without being too generalizing, I think the best way directly to find out how somebody identifies or the words that they're most comfortable using is to ask. Um, Although I know that can be also tricky at times. I personally am trying to make the conscious effort of referring or generally speaking in gender neutral terms as a starting point, um, because that to me feels the most inclusive. And then from there, trying to ask people how they would prefer to be referred to, because I know, or in conversations that I've had with my mom, um, who's older generation, from grew up in Mexico, immigrated here, is that when there is really a significant, or was it like a popular, became had gained more traction shift to use gender neutral terms, she was telling me like, oh, some people go back and like if you go back to the homeland, they don't know what you're talking about because I'm not sure if it's more Western or more younger generations, but it hasn't quite caught on. Or I think the fact that a lot of Latinx cultures are so gendered and are a bit machista, there can also be like conflict on the other end where people don't wish to be referred to in a gender neutral term and they do want to have specific pronouns. So the O in Latino, in the way that Spanish is structured, if there is, and pardon me if you or the listeners already know this, but if there is a singular or group of females, you would use Latina or Latinas, which is the feminine. If there is a single or multiple male, it would be Latino, Latinos. But as soon as the group is there some mixture of the two, it could be a group of 99 women and one man. As soon as there is a mixed gendered group in the Spanish language, you then only use the male term. So then it would be Latinos. So there's a lot of like gender politics behind it, but my personal suggestion, go back to, is saying something more gender neutral, like Latine or Latinx.
At best, it's tricky.
Yes, it's a loaded question.
What can Pennsylvanians do to make the outdoors a welcoming place for the Latino community?
I think at the individual level, if it's within the person's personality, I would say to try to extend any welcoming or warm attitudes that they may have to people that they see on trails or outside. I know it's common, at least for hiking, for people to greet each other in general. Um, but I'd say to just extend friendliness and you know be try to be like physically welcoming with a smile or a wave. Um, I think maybe like looking away or trying to pass in silence could be received as like a passive, um, unwelcoming gesture. So at the individual scale, I would, yeah, I would say to just to reach out at a level that you are comfortable doing, not to prod or just try to be respectful. But acknowledge them as if you would any other trail goer or camper.
Kindness is always the best answer.
Exactly.
Do you think it's important that more outdoor organizations include the Latino community in leadership? What kind of benefit do you think that'll have?
I think in general, having greater diversity and hearing more voices is important, to have different perspectives and hear different the ways in which different policies or procedures may be impacting either people directly or their communities if they have the knowledge or are comfortable with being a spokesperson for their community. Um, I think what gets tricky is when people, either Latino or otherwise, people from ethnic minorities are expected to be the spokesperson, for their culture. So I think there's a combination of one to be respectful of diverse experiences without also inadvertently placing a burden upon somebody to be the representative of their ethnic or cultural heritage. But I would say the more diversity, the better, because the only way to really learn, or a great way to learn, I think is to listen. And so if people are not being included, if they're not being invited to share, it's difficult to expand learning. And there's only so much you can do by collecting data. And that's definitely a way of learning, but it's a different, it it's not tapped into the human, more subjective experience of how practices or policies are being are affecting people at an individual level, or sometimes it can be the like an implicated, outcome of a practice. Like an outdoor org might do something with the best intentions, but without being properly informed, um, they could misstep and create harm.
Sticking with that topic, what can traditionally white outdoor organizations do to diversify their membership? And what do you think they can do to support what you're doing with Latino Outdoors?
I think a great place to start would be partnerships and hearing from other groups that are like ethnic or culturally based, hearing from them maybe lessons learned or what they feel like is lacking in the outdoor space, and really having a infor- information based approach to how a, a like traditionally white org could go about diversifying their membership. I think that an an obvious answer or a surface level answer would be to try to diversify their leadership or diversify, something more top of mind. But in terms of really permeating the like structure and how the organization operates, I don't think that would create a long-standing change. because I can think of organizations, especially with there being a really strong push for DEI, whose first or one of their first actions or change that they enact is trying to diversify their leadership or going through DEI training. And if the organization itself is really has really strong, like going back to cultural roots, if the makeup of the organization, how it was founded and operated, and the practices and maybe implicit biases or biases are patriarchal or Western in like a white Western way, I think trying to create change by just simply having people present is not a long-standing way to, at your core, shift values or understand different experiences. So I would say it would be great to first try to partner or hear from other orgs or nonprofits and what they do and try to support and maybe have a collaborative event and then see how it goes from there. Because I think it's, while our events and while other events that I've heard of can be like open to all, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to receive a very diverse demographic.
Does Latino Outdoors work with other minority-based organizations to make connections and diversify the outdoors?
Yes, all the time. There are some that are on a regional level, or I'm sorry, there are some that are on a national level, and there are some that are more regionally based. Nationally, I believe we are a partner with REI, which is a co-op, and they put a portion of their own revenue back into organizations and back into outdoor initiatives. I know they also support Outdoor Afro and other similar orgs. And then on a regional level, the camping trip that I mentioned, we work with Sierra Club, which I believe is one of, if not the oldest environmental org, and they have an outdoors for all program. And so what this is an organization that is not minority founded or based, but it's through other partnerships and other means is really making an effort to diversify.
Where can people go to learn more about Latino Outdoors Philly?
Yeah, so we're on social media. On Instagram, we're LO_Philadelphia. I think you can find our Facebook group by just typing in Latino Outdoors Philly. And then we also have a Linktree website, which that to be able to access that is on both our Instagram and Facebook, but it's linktr.ee/LO_Philly. And there we really post a lot of we'll post our event links directly, like on our social channels. We'll do posters and flyers and photos, but that Linktree website is really where we'll have our signups for events, and we have a list of past events, which will also give you a sampling of the kind of thing that we have done before. And then we also have some push buttons for getting in contact.
Well, Julie, thanks so much for talking to us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for having me.
I want to thank my guest, Julie Passion, for joining the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more information about upcoming episodes. You can support the podcast by buying merch or donating on our website. This has been Hemlocks to Hellbenders. I'll see you out there. Hosting, production, and editing by Christian Alexanderson. Music by John Sauer. Graphics by Uncle Traveling Matt's Random Expedition.